All right, here's a few news articles. So there are apparently some very good high schools in this area, which I'm interested to see. When I was young, a very long time ago, I went to high school and the place was basically just a prison. There was no education, nothing but violence and gangs there, which, as far as I can tell, still remains the norm. I used to ride an early bus to go to work in Marin County, and I'd see all the high school students trading drugs, getting drunk, discussing the nasty things they plan to do that day in school. It's clearly there's a lot of rotten high schools, but apparently there's some very good ones around here. The number one being one in Palo Alto and such, so that's a good thing. If I had a kid going to school, I would be very concerned about the quality of that school. Anyway, so OAN, the most far-right network, even to the far right of Fox, which spends every night promoting Russian propaganda and racism and anti-vax content, OAN has been dropped by AT&T for some reason. I mean, AT&T's totally been promoting it all along. In fact, they created it because they thought that their content was too left-leaning and they weren't getting enough customers that were on the right, and so they wanted to create a new far-right network, but they've cut out their funding, and they were all dependent on one source of funding, so they're responding by trying to find dirt on the AT&T chairman, who is black, and humiliate him and maybe force him to get fired or something and force him to restore the channel, which I'd say is quite on brand. I kind of doubt that that sort of pressure campaign will work, but maybe it will, but it's certainly the OAN brand. So Florida's passed their anti-CRT bill, or at least it's approved by a Senate committee. I guess it's not completely done yet, but this is, you see a lot of excitement about this from teachers in Florida. I think this is either Florida or Texas, where the school administrators told teachers that if you teach about the Holocaust, you also must provide the other point of view without judgment, that there was no Holocaust. And they tried to walk that back, but that is what the law appears to say. And this one here is more of the same, that you shouldn't suggest that in any way like white people did anything bad in the past. And how you teach history without mentioning things like slavery and the genocide of the Native Americans and stuff is not clear, but that's what they want. So we'll see what comes of all this. A big issue to change American history into even more propaganda than it already is. And I must say, it already is pretty much propaganda. What I learned is pretty much propaganda. I had to go learn history as an adult. What they taught me was just nonsense about George Washington and cutting down a cherry tree and things like that, which was the kind of stuff that these guys want. And this, I think, is a huge educational issue, and the kind of thing we're going to talk about quite a bit in this class here. Should education actually teach people the truth, or should education be propaganda to make your citizens feel patriotic? And right now, in America, where we've had a tradition, to some extent, of teaching the truth, we seem to be collapsing as a society into a sort of civil war. And China, where they absolutely manifestly control, erase unpleasant aspects of their history, and absolutely force everybody to promote the party and throw you in prison and punish you if you dare to say anything against the party. They have high morale. They're all working together. I mean, that's the old rule. Lie to the people, tell them that everything is great, tell them their leaders are gods, tell them to love their leaders, and that's better for them than the truth. They're too dumb to handle the truth. And right now, the systems with this sort of population control by lying to them appear to be succeeding better than the system where you tell people the truth and trust them to make an intelligent decision based on that. So we'll see. But it's not like this is completely wrong. It's just another society, and it's certainly better in some ways to just lie to people and tell them to all just stay in their place and everything is fine. So there have been a bunch of these cases I've seen go by where they take professors who get research grants and then they accuse them of being covert Chinese agents because they have some kind of relationship to Chinese companies or Chinese universities after this. And it was always kind of unclear exactly what they did wrong. And now they've dropped the case, finding out that ultimately this professor that had a Chinese, was working on something in cooperation with China, did not really do anything wrong. But they tried to say this person had some kind of undisclosed conflict of interest. This is the China Initiative, set up in 2018 to crack down on Chinese economic espionage. So it's always been very murky, not exactly clear if something wrong is happening here and exactly what laws people are being prosecuted on. Here's another China story. China makes and sells the security scanners that you use to scan packages and people at airports and so on, and their scanners are much cheaper and much better than the competitors. So almost everybody in Europe is using the Chinese scanners, but the problem is in China, as I said, the government is very powerful. And so no company could actually say no if the government came and said, I need to see your data. That happens here too, but in general, companies have some ability to fight back. But in China, they have no ability to fight back. So if you're using Chinese equipment to do significant things like scan packages and people going through airports, that could be going to the Chinese government. And if you are a nation that is hostile to China, that's not a good idea. And they're getting pretty upset about this. So a lot of interesting stuff in this article about where Nuctech is the name of the company, and it's mostly been frozen out of the U.S. by national security concerns, but most of the countries in Europe have gone with it, saying that the only alternative is to buy Chinese scanners or Russian scanners. They're the only companies available, and the Chinese scanners are better. And both of them present security risks, so people are pretty concerned about that. This is a lot like Huawei, that makes all this cheap, fast network equipment, and we pretty much banned it in America for the same reason, saying that even though we don't have any direct evidence that Huawei is sending data to Chinese for surveillance, to Chinese government, if the Chinese government requested them to, they would have to. And therefore, it's not considered wise to use it in a country that is somewhat hostile towards China. A lot of progress on quantum computing. The Europeans have made a cloud quantum computer in Germany with more than 5,000 qubits. This is a quantum annealer from D-Wave that's made smaller ones. So this is a very powerful quantum computer and very likely to be useful to solve real-world problems like optimizing complicated travel, like solving the traveling salesman problem and problems like that, where you have to choose between a large number of possible paths and find the best one. This is the sort of problem that's solved by annealing, which is a simulation of the process of a liquid crystallizing as you cool it, which is pretty much the same thing. You have billions of atoms, and each atom can be in many locations, so there's an unthinkable number of combinations, and yet somehow as you cool it, it smoothly finds to just settle in the bottom of the vessel. It's able to quickly find the optimum space with lowest energy, even though it has to wade through a large number of possibilities, and that's what a quantum annealer simulates. So any problem that can be reduced to that sort of mathematical structure can be solved efficiently. And so we'll see how that works out. And in the same spirit, there's been a major breakthrough in quantum computing. Qubits have been very noisy until recently. Qubit is the equivalent of a bit, and they now have achieved 99% accuracy with 3 different systems to make quantum bits using the nuclei of atoms, which is enormous because if you have 99% accuracy, you can then use error correction to improve that and get to a really high level of accuracy, and then you can do real computation on quantum computers. So quantum computers are not yet practical to accomplish anything, but the progress is very impressive. And I'm saying now in 5 to 10 years, there'll probably be an expensive cloud computer somewhere that really does something awesome. And in 20 years, there'll probably be something that people can afford to buy that actually does something awesome. Exactly what, we don't know yet. But it'll be a revolution as certain kinds of calculations suddenly get much faster. They're making AI fighter pilots. These are drones that are intelligent themselves, that fly around and fire guns and stuff with humans guiding them, but not really controlling every move. And they passed the early tests. So they say this is one of the promises since the 60s. Computer science has been promising this, that we're going to make robot soldiers so our soldiers don't have to go and die on battlefields. So that's enormously popular. Of course, there are all the possible dark sides of it if the things go out of control and such, which the early ones have done, gone out of control and shot the wrong people. But they're still at it. It's such a desirable thing that it certainly will be coming. Let me just answer a message here. All right. Anyway. And let's get rid of this garbage. All right. So anyway, the Biden's been promising free masks, but it turns, you might not want to trust him, but on the other hand, the alternative is to send some poor pilot to fight and die. So even a plane with some defects is probably worth using under some circumstances. Anyway, So the Biden administration has been planning to distribute tests and masks to people, but it has been pretty much a mess. They took forever to put out the tests. They just put up the test website, which will send 4 tests to your house, but apparently if you have more than 4 people that live in your house, you're out of luck. And of course, 4 tests is not enough anyway. You'll run out of them. And if you have an apartment building, it won't send any at all, and so on. So they're going to send some masks to some people, but I think it's still unclear how you're going to get them. But apparently Walgreens is going to do something. And so if you could just go to a Walgreens and get free masks, that might actually accomplish something more than these other programs that seem hopelessly inadequate. But it's not happening yet. They say it's going to come soon. Hong Kong is trying to have their zero COVID policy. So they have decided that there was a case from a pet store. Several people got COVID that worked at a pet store, so they are killing the hamsters on the grounds that the hamsters are probably spreading COVID, which sounds pretty plausible. We know that mink, deer, tigers, lions, dogs, and cats all carry COVID. And so it would seem logical that hamsters probably do too. So Mayor London Breed had a photo op a while ago where she angrily said she's going to do something about the outrageous amount of crime in San Francisco, but it wasn't clear what she wants to do. And now the first thing she wants to do apparently is give police access to surveillance cameras. Right now, the police are very limited in accessing private surveillance cameras in San Francisco, and the privacy advocates like it that way. Mayor London Breed wants to give the police the right to monitor surveillance cameras to catch criminals, and the Board of Supervisors doesn't want that. So as I expected when she announced that, she will say she's going to do something, and then she'll hit the Board of Supervisors the way the Biden administration hits the Senate, where everything goes to die. So I think in practice, nothing much will really change. But we will see. Over privacy concerns. Yeah. I know Google did that. They put these they show you these Nest things, and the original plan was that everybody would send their Nest video to police all the time. They thought everybody would be on board with that, and a bunch of people were not on board with that, and they ended that program, I think. All right, let me stop this one.